What's up guys, welcome back to yet another video, and today I'm sharing my thoughts after using this board for 6+ months now. Now there are many things I love about this paddleboard, but there are also a few things that I find inconvenient as well. This particular board is a 2022 model of the Starboard Allstar Airline, and it is 14 feet long by 26 inches wide. Now I won't be going into all the details of this paddleboard as I already do have a full review of this board when I first purchased it. So if you're interested in learning about the full scope of this paddleboard, be sure to check out that video linked below. But real quick, here's just a short overview of this paddleboard. On the sides of the board, we have the welded rail technology. At the nose of the paddleboard, we have our nose cone, as well as a tension adjuster for the carbon stringer, which runs from the adjuster down the bottom of the paddleboard to the fin box. The top paddleboard, we have our GoPro mounts, twin carbon stringers, bungee straps, race handles, and a center carry handle, as well as an EVA standing tray. And at the very back of the board, we have our kick pad. And then last but not least, we have our rail edge technology, which is located at the back bottom side of the paddleboard, which helps the water release as you're paddling along. Let's talk about some pros of this paddleboard. Now the first and biggest one obviously being, since this is an inflatable paddleboard, it is so nice to travel with. You can simply roll it up, put it inside the travel bag that it comes with, and then go anywhere you want in the world without any inconvenience. If you were to have the hard version of this race board, you'd find it way more inconvenient and way more difficult to travel, especially flying with that board. So for the travel aspect alone, this board is way better and way more convenient versus the hard version of this paddleboard. Another thing that I love about this paddleboard is simply how durable it is. I can drop it on things where I can set it down on hard surfaces and not really worry about damaging the paddleboard at all. Being an inflatable paddleboard, it simply bounces off those hard surfaces, and it's also very hard to scratch it as well. So overall, durability of this paddleboard is a huge pro. Now let's talk a little bit about how this board has performed for me over 6+ months of paddling in a variety range of conditions. As I said earlier, this board is a 26-inch wide model, and with that I found this paddleboard to be very stable. Now when I first got on this board though, I was coming from an all-round paddleboard that was 32 inches wide. So because of that, this board did feel a little bit wobbly at first. But within 2 weeks, I was paddling around in more choppy conditions on this board and feeling super confident. So having a little bit wider version of this race board definitely helps with stability quite a bit. Another feature that I love about this paddleboard is the nose cone at the front of the board. This nose cone really helps the board punch through any chop, as well as helping you go upwind with much more ease. When it comes to the overall speed of this board is very quick. Once again, if you're coming from an all-round paddleboard, you're going to notice a massive increase in your speed going to this paddleboard. If you want to see just how much faster this paddleboard is in comparison to an all-round paddleboard, I also did a video on that. So if you're interested in seeing those times, be sure to check out that video link down below after you watch this one. Now if you are comparing this board to the little bit more narrow version of this one, this board will be a tad bit slower in comparison to the more narrow version of this paddleboard. So if you are a higher skilled rider and you want the fastest inflatable race board out there, I would definitely check out the more narrow versions of this paddleboard. Let's talk about the cons, which really aren't cons, they're really just more inconvenient things about this paddleboard that I have found after using it for 6+ months now. The first thing that I wish I could do with this paddleboard that I can't is being able to move these race handles in different positions for going racing. Now obviously I know it's kind of impossible to do with an inflatable paddleboard, as I do have to find just one single fixed position to put these handles on this paddleboard. That's something I know that I would love if I had the hard version of this race board, is being able to move those handles around on it to the best position for myself. So like I said earlier, it's not really a con, it's more of just an inconvenience that I wish I could do with this paddleboard. One of the other things I don't necessarily love about the inflatable version of this All-Star race board is that with the inflatable version here, you get the volume spread out evenly through the entire paddleboard. Now paddling in flat water conditions, this is no problem. But when it comes to trying to ride swell or going on downwinds, this does become a little bit of a problem. So for example, when I try to take this board downwinding, when the swell comes up behind me, it starts to push me from behind. Even when I'm standing further back on the paddleboard, the nose still tries to dip down and grab the water in front of it. Simply due because the volume is so evenly spread out to the paddleboard, there's no extra volume in the front to help that nose push up out of the water more easily. So because of that, you will have to do more footwork on this paddleboard in downwind conditions, mostly having to stand further back on the paddleboard, keeping that nose out of the water and grabbing it. Now it's not to say this paddleboard can't handle those conditions, but it will be a little bit more difficult to ride in those conditions in comparison to the hard version of this paddleboard. So just keep that in mind if you're looking to buy the inflatable version or the hard version of this All-Star race board. If you're someone who does more flat water paddling, this board will perform super well. But if you're someone who does a lot of downwinding, for example, you will find this board a little bit more challenging to use in those type of conditions. And then lastly, one of the things that took me a little while to get used to when it comes to paddling this paddleboard is the flex that it does have in it. Now with those twin carbon stringers on top, as well as the carbon stringer that runs from the nose of the board to the back of the board, it does make this paddleboard very rigid for being an inflatable paddleboard, but at the end of the day, it will still have some flex to it. So if you're someone who typically uses a hard race board or a hard all-around paddleboard, and you jump on this thing, you will notice a little bit of difference in your paddling stroke and your paddling style with a little bit of flex that this paddleboard does have to it. Now that's not to say that this flex is necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to get used to when you paddle on this paddleboard on more choppy conditions, or if you're paddling with more speed and more power in your stroke, as that board will tend to flex a little bit as you're putting so much power in your paddle stroke. I just know from my personal preference, if I'm going to paddle on more choppy conditions, I would definitely prefer to have a hard board underneath my feet versus an inflatable paddleboard. Overall though, I'm still super happy about this paddleboard and super stoked that I bought it. I'm able to travel with it super easily. I can get super good workouts in on it. I can paddle in a variety of conditions, and now you can even take it racing with me. So if you're someone who's interested in purchasing this paddleboard, I hope this video and my thoughts after using this board for 6+ months now kind of gives you some more insights and helps you decide whether the inflatable version or the hard version of this race board is best for you.